So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to. It's a happy day. What can I say? Together,
we interrupt this program to bring you a message from an extra special Drag Race viewing party.
Hi, everyone. It's Kamala Harris. Each day, we are seeing our rights and freedoms under attack, including the right of everyone to be who they are, love who they love, openly and with pride. So as we fight back against these attacks, let's all remember, no one is alone. We are all in this together, and your vote is your power. So please make sure your voice is heard this November and register to vote at vote.gov.
Can I get an amen?
Amen! Now on with the show.
And remember, you better vote.
A little bit of love goes a long
Harris. President Joe Biden has made the selfless decision to pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, who is ready, willing, and able to lead us into the future. Kamala Harris and her candidacy has excited and energized the House Democratic Caucus, the Democratic Party, and the nation. Vice President Harris has earned the nomination from the grassroots up and not the top down.
The chaos and confusion over the past couple months alone is not by coincidence. This country is currently in the midst of a war for the narrative. And for the first time in decades, the Democrats and the elites are losing. Live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky.
Perfect.
All right, folks, old news at this point. Joe Biden is out of here. You're out! And Kamala Harris looks to be the new presumptive replacement for the Democratic nomination. This will actually be the first episode where I've discussed any of that at length, and that is for a reason. I kind of wanted to let the dust settle on this topic because I don't intend in this video today to discuss it the way that you've probably seen it discussed in every other video you've watched over the past week. I have taken some careful time to process all the new developments and try to synthesize exactly what is happening right now, because it's easy to get bogged down in the details, particularly if you follow news, political news on any regular basis. You will find that they kind of have to address every single new story that comes up. That's their job. And the fatal flaw of that is that most of the things that come out, most of the new developments are nothing. They are filler. They are distractions. And so unfortunately, by entertaining every single little thing that happens, every single thing they tell you is happening, you actually become more confused and less clear on the bigger picture. So today, I'm not going to sit here and talk about Kamala's polls and, oh, look at this new New York Times. Oh, look at this. We're not doing that today. What I want to talk about is what's actually happening. Okay? And we're going to start with the war for the narrative. Because that is what we are witnessing, and we're not just witnessing it, we are it. We are all a part of this. There is a power struggle in this country for control of the narrative. The narrative is the story we tell ourselves about where we come from and where we are now. And whoever controls that controls where we are going. Now, for the longest time, as far back as I've been following politics, that would be a little over a decade, the Democrats have controlled that narrative. And anyone who may have opposed that narrative, anybody who may have seen things differently, has been seen in pop culture to be counterculture, extremist, fringe, and all of the above. However, recently, as I mentioned, the Democrats appear to be losing the plot. You may recall a game from your youth, Two Truths and a Lie. The Democrats are currently playing a game I like to call Two Lies and a Bigger Lie. And these all are surrounding the narrative. So let's start with the first lie. This is probably the smallest lie because it's actually an internal struggle within the Democratic Party for their own narrative. This is the party establishment trying to control the narrative to their own base. Now, after Biden stepped down via tweet, PDF, and then ghosted the American public for the following few days before doing an 8-minute pre-recorded teleprompter announcement that he's stepping down, not because he's unfit to run for president, but because he's unfit to run for president. Which, by the way, and we're going to get into this later, this of course does not mean he's unfit to be the president currently. It just means that in 5 months he won't be, but also not even that. That's for later. Kamala Harris was then installed as the presumptive replacement for the Democratic nomination. And installed is the proper word. There is no better word to describe how Kamala Harris ended up in her current position. Nobody voted for Kamala Harris, including in the 2020 primaries running against Joe Biden. She received exactly 0 delegates. After Biden won that race, he then picked Kamala Harris as his vice president because she's a black woman. And that is a reality that you can either choose to acknowledge or not. But that's it. That's why she is the vice president right now. Nobody liked her as a vice president. She remained incredibly inconsequential, as most vice presidents do, in her defense. And the things that she did deal with, she failed miserably. In the aftermath of the presidential debate last month between Biden and Trump, where the entirety of the American public had no choice but to recognize Biden's cognitive decline, there were several questions raised in the Democratic Party, including, can Biden be replaced? He's already won the primary. And if we do replace him, who would be the person to replace him? Now, on paper, it would seem that she would make the most sense. She is the vice president. Naturally, if the president is deemed unfit to serve, you would relegate that responsibility to the vice president. That's kind of the point. I think the Democrats may have forgotten that when they merely appointed her for being a diversity hire. And then they realize, oh shit, this is like a potential thing that happens if the president can't serve or run. And I know this because I've spoken to many of my liberal friends. I was actually at a birthday party last weekend among pretty much all liberal people in their 20s. This is right before Biden had dropped out. And everyone, amidst discussing whether or not he would drop out and how much they'd like him to, they were all raising possible suggestions as the replacement. And all of them unanimously agreed that they don't want to vote for Kamala. They don't. I heard a bunch of crazy things. Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom. And what you realize, A, is that it's kind of pathetic for a party that there is not one clear frontrunner, including the person, Biden himself, that is the current nominee or was up until he dropped out, that anyone supported en masse. All they had was a bunch of fairly recognizable names that they desperately clawed at to be like, well, maybe it could be this person, maybe it could be that person. But 0 of those people that they raised warranted any enthusiasm. They weren't happy about any of those options, but they were especially not happy about the possibility of Kamala. And that, I believe, is represented by everyone. That has been shown in polls that we've seen up until this week, coincidentally, that no one likes Kamala Harris. But here's the problem. It's already bad enough that the guy that we've been lying to the public about for the past 4 years has now been discovered unequivocally to be in late stage dementia. This took all of us by surprise. None of us saw this coming. It was like the day before the debate, he was great. And then he woke up on that day and he was bad. And the minute we realized Biden was bad on Thursday, June 27th, 2024, we stepped in to say, hey, you got to go. And that was that. But now they are in a position where if they don't put up Kamala as the nominee, It undermines the entire Biden administration. What message does that send to the public and the party when your nominee, the president, has to step down, and then his vice president, Kamala Harris, is also overlooked to take on the role of nominee for 2024? Well, that basically says that, wow, not only was the president unfit to serve this entire time, but the vice president is also a horrible choice as well. You have been run for the past 4 years, supposedly, by two people that the Democrats themselves don't even like. At this juncture, you can't do that. You have to at least pretend that Kamala Harris is viable. And that is why I'm not convinced, truly, that Kamala Harris will ultimately be the nominee come the Democratic convention. Because I understand that Biden has been in the process of stepping down since that debate. From the moment he was exposed for what he truly is in that debate, the writing was on the wall. But you can't just immediately step down. He can't immediately be forced out. He has to do the press conferences. He has to get on there and say, I'm running, I'm the best candidate. He has to maintain that narrative until magically, weeks later, he steps down. Even though the night before, he's talking about how he's the most qualified candidate, he's going to run, Kamala Harris is fully backing him, all the party establishment is just, whatever you got to do, I still think, we got to beat Trump. Boom, then he steps down. And then immediately, the entire party falls in line behind Kamala. This did not happen overnight. Much the same way that Biden did not develop dementia overnight before the debates, Joe Biden did not step down, and Kamala Harris did not become his presumptive replacement overnight. That is how they want to pitch the story to the public, but that is not what happened. They also have to pretend that you want her to be the nominee. They have to pretend, as they've said multiple times in press conferences, that this is a bottom-up grassroots campaign with immense public support for Kamala, and none of that is the truth. But they have to keep on using those words on purpose. Bottom up, grassroots, organic. None of that is the case. This is the complete opposite of grassroots. This is the most undemocratic selection of a candidate that I think we have ever witnessed in American politics. And so if you're a Democrat and you go, okay, so not only did you actively hide from us that Joe Biden was unfit to serve, not only did we all collectively realize that only after we voted him in again during the primaries, where, again, he ran uncontested, we had no choice but to vote for Biden. But at the very least, we weren't aware that this was his current mental state. And now that we found out that you basically hoodwinked us and slid him under the rug as the new nominee, making us think that that was our choice, but now he's removed, and now you're just going to blatantly put someone else in that nobody voted for, that nobody supports. This was your choice, Democrats. You're welcome. Remember how bottom-up, grassroots, and organic this was? Remember how enthusiastic you were about Kamala Harris? I mean, does it get more democratic than that, Democrats? What are you, a fascist? Democracy dies in darkness, Democrats. This is what democracy looks like, by the way. So that's what they need you to believe. They need you to believe that your opinion as a Democratic voter matters at all. They need the base to believe that they have any say in this whatsoever, or that they ever did. And that narrative is flailing. Now, the bigger lie is to the general public, which is that Kamala Harris, in addition to being enthusiastically supported by her own base, the Democrats, she is also a very viable threat to Donald Trump. Have you seen the polls? Kamala Harris has shot up in the polls. This race is not over, folks. We got ourselves an election on our hands. No. Bullshit. Any surge in the polls that we may be experiencing are "we're happy Biden dropped out" bumps. That's what that is. Nobody is stoked about Kamala Harris. The Democrats are happy that at the very least, the guy that they were all tricked into voting for, only to realize that they don't want him, has now stepped down. So they're enthusiastic, I guess, about that. But they have zero enthusiasm for Kamala Harris herself. Even if I were to acknowledge that the opinion polls are accurate, that there is actually an equal divide in this country between people's opinions of Kamala and people's opinions of Trump, opinion polls are opinion polls for a reason. And unlike in 2020, where we were able to use COVID to justify a complete breach of all state election codes to institute unprecedented levels of mail-in ballots and unknown levels of other voter fraud and irregularities that have yet to be looked into on any significant level. We're just supposed to pretend that that never existed or that we actually ever looked into it, much like we totally are looking into the assassination attempt. All of that, at least in theory, was able to get a bunch of people who normally wouldn't vote to vote. And so when people were able to sit home and fill out a letter and then mail it out and then have those votes be counted 4 times, you were able to, at the very least, pull off the idea that maybe you got enough to beat Trump. But now in 2024, unless something drastic happens where we need to institute mail-in balloting again, people actually need to go out and vote. People actually need to be motivated to vote. And the motivation to vote has to come from something. If it's not going to be from the candidate themselves, and anyone who's honest can acknowledge that even in 2020, the motivation to vote for Biden did not come from an immense amount of public support and enthusiasm for Biden. It came from an immense amount of public contempt for Trump. And Biden happened to be the guy that was standing on the other side of the stage, and therefore he got all these votes. Apparently the most popular president in history, the most votes of any presidential candidate ever, Biden. That guy, the guy that just stepped down, the guy that can't even finish a sentence. He's the most popular presidential candidate in history, by the way, guys. And that dementia just started yesterday. Don't look into it. But at the very least, there was enough of a referendum on Trump. There was enough popular culture, public disdain for Trump that one could believe that people were motivated to vote against him, and therefore they did, especially when all it took was to mail in a ballot and not have to actually show up to a poll and wait in line and spend a day casting a vote. But now, none of those things exist because much like in 2020, the Democratic candidate has zero enthusiasm behind her. Zero. Nobody is getting off the couch to vote for Kamala. At best, they are getting off the couch to vote against Trump. But here's the other thing. That narrative has changed. If you've noticed, it seems like the whole never Trump thing is kind of losing steam. There are a lot of people that still hate Trump, but it has become a little bit more socially acceptable to acknowledge Trump, discuss Trump, dare I say even express support for Trump. It's not as much of a taboo as it was even a year ago, especially after that assassination attempt. People are kind of coming out of the woodworks. It doesn't seem to be as much of an accepted given that Trump is horrible and all of his supporters are evil. That plot line, again, is flailing. So now we have an election, truthfully, assuming Kamala Harris does wind up being the nominee, which again, I am not convinced. We have an election between a Democratic candidate that no Democrats really are that stoked about versus a Republican candidate that, people don't hate him as much as they apparently did 4 years ago. They really don't. Mark Cuban tweeted out a poll the other day saying, is at X, Twitter, MAGA country? And 2/3 of the responses on that poll said yes. Yes, Twitter is MAGA country. Now, I found that question to be quite telling. A, because Mark Cuban is the definition of a liberal elite. He is a billionaire. He is one of the richest people in the world. He is extremely openly a Democrat voter, a Trump hater. And he goes on Twitter and sees the fact that there seems to be a lot of support for Trump on here. There seems to be a lot of anti-Biden, anti-woke culture on Twitter. This must be a MAGA website. This must be a far-right, forum. And then I thought about it and I went, yeah, I see a lot of, anti-Biden stuff on Twitter. I also see a lot of anti-Trump stuff on Twitter. But even if you go to YouTube or the Instagram comment sections, have you noticed that when you go into an uncontrolled open forum where regular people are allowed to express their opinions, whether it's under a Barstool post or whether it's under a YouTube video, you notice a lot more people expressing kind of pro-Trump, pro-America, not totally woke, not totally far-left perspective. And then you compare that to when you see the controlled media platforms, like when you turn on your television or Netflix or watch any sporting event or anything like that, where when it's a controlled environment, you would be under the impression that everyone agrees with the woke agenda and very few fringe extremists disagree with it. If you're a Trump supporter, you are very much in the minority. Very few people in this country see things the way you do. Well, that kind of tells me that, wow, so is it a coincidence that every single forum that allows for a free and open discussion of regular everyday people tends to not be nearly as lenient towards anti-Trump? It's almost as if the true sentiment in this country is not nearly as lopsided against Trump as they would have you believe. So not lopsided, in fact, that when people express regular opinions about Trump and it's not completely outnumbered by crazy anti-Trump opinions, this is considered a MAGA forum. It is a Trump forum if people are not unanimously against Trump, the way Hollywood and academia and the elite power structure is. That speaks more to Mark Cuban's tone deafness to everyday real Americans. And Mark Cuban's tone deafness to everyday real Americans speaks to all of those people's tone deafness to regular Americans. They are so immersed in their own little echo chamber, their own little bubble, that they literally do not have a concept of the fact that not everyone agrees with the shit that they are pumping out to the masses on a daily basis. And it is becoming increasingly more the case that people are actually turning on them. But they can't understand that. They can't understand that anyone could possibly disagree with them. After all, they are better than you, and this is what they think. So how are you going to think something else? You're not as good as them. And when they go to their cocktail parties and talk about how awesome they are, it has never occurred to them that regular everyday people don't really think they're that awesome and don't really think their opinions are correct. This is mind-boggling to them. This must be MAGA country. Twitter must be MAGA. YouTube is MAGA. Instagram comment sections are MAGA. Anything that we can't control the dialogue and spoon feed you propaganda must be a far-right forum. So the reality in America right now is that this election is signed, sealed, delivered for Trump, pending any type of fuckery. And of course, no one should be ruling out that. But all this false enthusiasm for Kamala, all this fake bullshit saying that she actually has a good chance of taking out Trump, all of that is here to distract you from the one biggest lie. And the biggest lie is that in case you forgot, Joe Biden is currently the president of the United States. Can you believe that? It's almost like we forget to remember that. It's almost like we all just focus on the fact that he's not running for re-election and forgot about the tiny little detail, which is that he's still the president for the next 5 months. And it's weird how different people are processing that. I think the majority of people are processing it, including myself, like, well, there's only 5 more months left in his term. What could he possibly fuck up in the next 5 months? He's almost made it to the finish line, and now we're just here to focus on the next 4 years. Well, maybe that's the case. Probably not. I would say the better way of looking at it, and why nobody seems to care, including the media, is because everyone understands implicitly that Joe Biden is not currently and never has been the actual president of the United States. He is not the person running this country. Therefore, nobody feels that uneasy that the supposed president of the United States, Joe Biden, has all but admitted to being completely unfit to be president or to run for president again. And nobody sees that as like an imminent threat for the state of our country. Nobody's like, oh my God, we don't have an actual president, because you never did. So actually, in reality, nothing is going to change on a policy level between now and the election that I can see. We've already had 2 gigantic global conflicts kick off. We've already had record level inflation and border crossings, and everything that could possibly go wrong over the course of 4 years has already been happening because we already haven't had a president. We've had a guy playing the role of president, and we've had a woman playing the role of vice president. And we've had, I guess, a committee or a group of people that are running things behind the scenes and obviously not doing a very good job of it, at least if their goal is to do good for the country. I think they're doing a phenomenal job if their goal is to enrich themselves. But I don't think that's the point of running a country, or at least it shouldn't be. So the fact that no one seems to mind that really exposes the biggest lie of all, which is, again, that he never was the president. That this administration is a figurehead administration. It is a puppet administration for the deep state. And the fact that they can simply swap out Biden for some other person, or some other person, or some other person, completely ignoring the Democratic vote of their own party, and they can just install people at will, is more of a testament to the fact that it doesn't really actually matter who they put up for the nomination. It doesn't actually matter who winds up becoming elected on the Democratic Party ticket. They are exposing that on a daily basis. And what I feel bad for are the Democratic voters that see all of this happening right before their eyes, that are realizing more and more every day that their voice does not matter. That the only thing the Democratic Party has going for them, the only way they're able to maintain votes at all, is to fearmonger against Trump and the right. If the Democrats didn't have Trump, they would have nobody. And they've been able to use Trump to crowbar in anything and anyone they want on their end, because their base, as far as they think, are not focused on who is actually the representative of their own party. They're more focused on just making sure that that other guy doesn't win. So that fear-mongering has allowed the Democrats to completely usurp any inkling of democracy in their own party. And so to recap those lies, you have the smallest internal lie, which is that anyone actually supports Kamala Harris within the Democratic Party. You have the bigger external lie, which is that Kamala Harris stands a fighting chance against Trump, or that she's viable in any way, shape, or form. And then you have the biggest lie. The biggest lie is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you support Kamala. It doesn't matter if anyone votes for Kamala, because whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. And go fuck yourself. That's the big lie. It doesn't matter if Joe Biden stepped down last week or last month or last year. It never mattered. And now they don't even feel the need to pretend that that's not the case. See, normally they had the respect for their own base, at least, to give the illusion of choice. But they don't even respect you enough to do that anymore. And that leads me to the overall discussion. Because we've talked about the lies, the small lies, the big lies, and the narrative as a whole. And it's important to address something that we've addressed several times on this show, which is the goal of a lie. The goal of a lie is not necessarily to make you believe it to be the truth. That's obviously the best case scenario, and it makes things a lot easier if you do believe it, but that's not necessarily the goal. The goal of a lie is simply to make you doubt the truth. Because if I can make you doubt the truth, then you have nothing to combat my truth. If I have rid you of what you know to be true, then you have no leg to stand on in saying that what I tell you is true is not true. And it doesn't matter what the lie is, by the way, as long as there is a lie. There are an infinite number of wrong answers to the question 2 + 2. There is only one right answer, however. I could tell you that it equals 5 or 6 or -150. It doesn't really matter as long as I can make you doubt that it's 4. If I can make you doubt that 2 + 2 = 4, then you are unable to tell me why it's not 5 or why it's not 6 or why it's not -150. If I can make you lose sight of the obvious, simple reality, the truth, then I can replace it with my truth. And when you look back at all the various lies that we've been exposed to as the American public and the Democratic voters particularly, just within the past month, all the various lies that never seem to tie into the next one, there's no guiding thing. It's just lie after lie after lie. And well, now it's this and it's not this anymore. It's that. And actually, we never said that. It's this now. Oh, well, now it's this actually. We never even said that either. We just memory hole whatever the story was yesterday and replace it with the news story today. And that will not be the same story tomorrow. But we're not supposed to talk about what we said yesterday or the day before. We're focused on what we're saying now. Going back to before the debate, Biden was incredibly fit to serve. He's the best president we've ever had. This administration has done more than any administration. He is the most viable candidate to run for presidency again. There is no cognitive decline. He doesn't have dementia. That's just conservative media. That's just cheap fakes, misinformation, Russian propaganda, whatever the hell they told you. And they did tell you that. And then after the debate, when it becomes unavoidable to everyone that this is not fake news, this is real. Biden is actually unfit to serve. The new line becomes, look, it was a bad night. It was a bad night. He does a press conference, interview on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos. It was a bad night. Let's not, look, nobody's going to pretend that was a good performance, but like that's not indicative of Joe Biden, okay? And then nobody buys that, and so they move to the next one, which is, okay, look, you know what? None of us saw this coming. We had no idea. This must have happened like last Tuesday or something overnight. So all of us are taken by surprise. Look, we can acknowledge Biden isn't the guy he used to be, but, the reality is you already voted for him, Democrats. Remember when you already voted for him? And we can't push him out. Unless he steps down, there's nothing we can do, and he's not going to step down. He's not going to step down. So I think the best thing to do is just to rally behind Joe Biden because remember Trump? Remember Trump? You don't want Trump to win, do you? So maybe you should just shut the fuck up and vote for Biden. And then people are sitting there like, I do remember Trump. Yeah, you are right. Good point. I don't want Trump in office, but I'm not going to lie. I'm not super stoked about Biden. And then they go, and then Biden steps down. Boom, Biden's out. But not because he's unfit to serve, of course. And not, honestly, he could run again for another 4 years. It's not that. He's just stepping down from the election. Why? Well, because it's the right thing to do. Why is it the right thing to do? Is it because he's unfit to run? No. He totally could. And he's a great president, but it's the right thing to do for him to step down. Why? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just he's stepping down. And look, we got Kamala now. And you guys are all very excited about Kamala. And then you're going, do we like Kamala? Yeah, you love Kamala. Look at these polls. You guys love Kamala. You've always loved Kamala. Remember when you voted for her? I don't remember. No, you guys love Kamala, and look, we're doing this for you. Biden stepped down, not because he's unfit to serve, not because he's unfit to run for re-election, but it's the right thing to do for him to step down, and we replace him with the bottoms-up, organic, grassroots Kamala Harris, who you all love and are all very excited for. I don't know. I feel like a couple weeks ago, she wasn't even like one of the main names pitched as a potential replacement because nobody liked her. And then, but we like her now? Yeah, you like her now. Remember, you like Kamala now. 2 + 2 = 5. Are you sure? Well, no, it equals 6. Well, actually, it's negative 150. Maybe. And the whole time, all they have done is not convince you that 2 + 2 = 5 or that 2 + 2 = 6. All they've done is make you doubt the obvious reality that 2 + 2 = 4. It doesn't matter what the lie is. That's the definition of gaslighting. I feel like you're cheating on me. Are you crazy? Look, you're going crazy. Okay, so you saw that on my phone, but that wasn't like, no, you're being nuts. You know what? You're being nuts. And now you're sitting there knowing full well that you're being lied to, but I don't know, maybe he's telling the truth because you don't want to believe the truth. That helps. But also, they have gaslit you into denying the obvious reality. And so there will be another lie, I believe, coming up to the convention that all of a sudden these other mainstream candidates come to the forefront and then they have an open convention in August and they nominate some other person to create even more of an illusion of choice among the parties. Well, hey, they didn't just install Kamala, they just installed somebody else who wasn't Kamala that we also didn't vote for. But that's a little bit better, right? And so they'll tell you that lie and they'll lead you all the way down the road with lie after lie after lie, banking on the fact that you will never realize, hey, you know what? 2 + 2 = fucking 4. It's very simple. Biden is inert. Kamala is inert. The Democratic Party has lost the plot. And all you have going for yourselves is Trump. Will they stick with Kamala through the convention? I don't know. In my opinion, it really comes down to how far along the Democrats are in the process of giving up. And if not giving up, how far are they willing to go in outright cheating and rigging an election? Which would have to be to a level that is more blatant and obvious than anything we thought we may have seen in 2020 or at any other point in history. Those are really their options. And it is possible that the Democrats have sort of conceded to just punting this election, and that is partly why they're putting Kamala up as the nominee. Because Kamala is a candidate that they do not believe has any real potential, has any real appeal, and they don't want to waste an election that they know they're going to lose on a candidate that they do think has potential. So Kamala, whether she knows it or not, and I guarantee you she doesn't know this, she is going to be the fall guy, so to speak, the patsy, the person who's just going to take the L in 2024 so that the Democrats can go into 2028 with a clean slate and prop up whoever it is that they believe is up next. That is a possibility. But again, I never rule out the level to which they are willing to go in order to get what they want. It seems like every time we do a new episode on this channel, we have reached a new level of ridiculousness that seemed inconceivable a week prior. I don't know what that next level would be. We've already hypothesized several things on this channel that have come true. So is it crazy to imagine that maybe the next step is false flag attacks and blaming it on Trump supporters, white supremacists, painting Donald Trump as the leader of a domestic terrorist organization, something like that? How far are they willing to go? I believe that if they were willing to imprison Trump, and if they were willing to if not orchestrate an assassination attempt, then at least cover up what actually happened, I believe they're willing to do all of that. Are they willing to come after American citizens? What are they willing to do? At this point, nothing would surprise me. So, as always on this channel, we'll see. Live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky. Until next time, peace.